If you'll turn to chapter 7, we're going to discuss today 4 different calculations. Now, these calculations are really pretty logical, and none of them result in an entry into the books. They are simply additional information that you might need in order to work with these contractors and to provide them the information that they need. Now, on page 7.3 is a worksheet. And just to familiarize you with the top half, it lists 5 different jobs. To the right of those job numbers, it shows the labor associated with that job for this month. And then to the right of that, it shows the materials or costs associated with those 5 jobs this month. There might have been other labor and materials charged the previous month or previous months. This is just this month's labor and materials, okay? Now what we're going to do is we're going to go through and finish out that worksheet up at the top, and then we're going to utilize that information in distributing other expenses. So if what you'll do, please, is add up the labor column, add up the materials column, and write the totals down at the bottom of each of those columns. Will do that for me? Okay. Steve, what'd you get as far as total labor?
20,000.
20,000 in labor, right? How much should we get in materials? 15. So during this month, on jobs that are in progress or were in progress during the month, we spent a total of 35,000, correct? Okay, write that total down in the far right-hand column, then add up each job horizontally and put the total of each job. Make sure that they add down together as well and add up to $35,000. Okay, Jen, would you read for us what the totals of each of those jobs was?
Job number 1 is 3,000.
3,000.
Number 2 is 5,000.
Number 2 is 5,000.
Number 3 is 13,000.
13,000 for 3.
Number 4 is 9,000.
9,000.
And number 5 is 5,000.
Number 5 is 5,000. Good. And that adds up to 35,000. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I want you to transfer that column now down to the far left-hand column in the bottom half. Just to add up, or just put the totals of each of those jobs down there so that we can use that information in doing the remaining part of this process. That was pretty simple stuff, wasn't it, so far? Where would we have gotten that information, by the way? Where would we have found out what the payroll information or labor information was for that month? By job.
By job.
Uh-huh.
And cash disbursements.
Cash disbursements and payroll journal, right? It would have just come right off of that. What about the purchases of materials? Where would we have gotten that information from? From the purchase journal, or in this case, I don't think we had a purchase journal here, so it's cash disbursements journal, okay? I think everything we paid for was cash. If we had a lot of purchases, we would have had to have included that purchase journal as well. Okay, now what we're going to do next is really the purpose of this worksheet, and that is to figure out where we spent the money this month and utilize that to distribute the expenses. Now you might recall, if you turn back to the CR Construction Company's income statement, you might notice that we had some expenses at the bottom of the income statement. Do you see that? Mm-hmm. Okay. Stacy, how much do we have in total expenses for CR Construction Company that month? $2,365. Okay? Now, those expenses were necessary in order to perform the services that we did during this month. Isn't that correct? And they might include the rent on the office. They might include, there's a lot of things that they could include, correct? And so if we wanted to know what the true complete cost of a job was, should we burden it or include a little bit of these expenses with it? What do you think? Would that be reasonable? Mm-hmm. In other words, a job might have cost us, 20, I'm just pulling a job out of my head, $20,000 is the direct cost. But in order to be successful at that, we had some other things. We had to pay for telephones we had to pay for office supplies, we had to pay possibly for a receptionist in the office. All those were also costs. They weren't directly attributable to one job, but they certainly were necessary to do that job. And so what we do is we calculate a burden. We figure out how much of those expenses really are associated with that job. And the way we do it is we take the total expenses and we distribute them back to the job based on how we spent for what we spent for purchases of materials and purchases of labor. Do you follow that? Now let me show you an example. In order to do this, going back to that worksheet, we need to figure out what percentage of the total $35,000 spent during the month was spent in each of those 5 jobs. Okay? Let's do the first one together. We had, how much did we spend on job number 1? $3,000. So what we want to do is figure out what percentage of the full $35,000 is the job number 1, or $3,000. So to do that, we're going to take the small number and we're going to divide it by the big number. So we take $3,000, we divide it by $35,000, and what will that give us? 9%? 8.6. So what would come out is you'd have on your calculator 0.086, and that equates to 8.6%. So that's what I want you to write down in the column to the right of where you place the $3,000. Okay? Okay, go ahead now and calculate that percentage following the same process all the way down for all 5 jobs, and the total of those percentages must equal 100%.